submachine gun, a weapon used by Special Operations Forces throughout the world. The HK-94 9mm carbine is recognized by firearms experts for its uncompromising performance in the field and on the range.
Hey there, this is the One Boom, and welcome to episode 2 of our weapon review series. Today we are looking at the C9, or, in real life, the HK MP5. Out of all of the times Call of Duty decides to not use the normal name and model of a weapon, this one's the funniest to me because we've had so many MP5s in Call of Duties recently and they're always really powerful. I feel like just to make it feel like they didn't have another MP5, they gave us something called the C9, which is clearly just an MP5 with a really gross little barrel shroud foregrip thing. I don't know what this is. I don't like it. As that is actually a very important part of this review, we'll double back to it in a little bit. But first I have to pull up the handy dandy stat chart. There it is. How exciting. It's the stats you'd see in the game if you loaded them up. It's just I get paid to show them to you because YouTube's a scam. No, actually, I think that there's a really important thing we can do with this stat chart because you guys can read this if you own the game and you care enough about the game to be watching a review about this SMG. You'll look at these yourself and come to your own conclusions. I decided to go through and compare it to the other SMGs in class the same way I did with the XM4, just sort of doing a stat comparison to see what things are highlighted and what things are not so important to talk about. And really when it comes down to it, what really strikes me is that there is only one other SMG in this game that has better range than it, and it's the Tonto 22. And that is a really important thing to point out because the Tonto 22 fires at 441 rounds per minute as compared to the C9 staggering 732 rounds per minute. A little under 300 RPM more, and we have just second in class range. The C9 is most effective within about 13 meters. That is where you are going to be dealing 29 damage to your opponents, which, yes, for those of you playing at home, that is a 4-shot kill with some change.
Like all HK firearms, the HK-94 uses a cold hammer-forged barrel. Our cold hammer forging process makes HK barrels last longer than barrels manufactured any other way.
When it comes to other stats like hip fire, it turns out that the KSV and the Tonto 22 are better at hip fire. It also turns out that other guns have faster rates of fire, such as the SOG 9mm or the Compact 92 or the KSV. But of course the C9 does fire faster than the Tonto 22, PP919, and the Jackal PDW. And do you smell that? That's right. The M4 and MP5 equivalents in this game are your sort of middle ground SMGs. The C9 has more range than some of the other SMGs, but a slower fire rate than some of the others, but a higher fire rate than some of the others. You see what I'm saying here? It's not amazing. It's not really excelling anywhere. There was nothing really in the stats that upset me enough to feel like I should tell you guys about. Its bullet velocity is about bang on average. The rate of fire is nice, but of course not the fastest or the slowest. All of the pistol grip magwell SMGs in this game, like the Jackal, the Tonto, and the SOG 9mm, have better mobility, but out of the SMGs with a little bit longer range and a little bit more DPS, the C9 does have the best mobility out of those, but of course you are going to be outmaneuvered by the Tonto, Jackal, and SOG. That's sort of where those guns shine. In terms of recoil, the percentages in my mind don't matter because the magnitude isn't very high, it's not that hard to control, you just have to know what the pattern is. The C9 is a middle of the road SMG, it's not the best mobility, it's not the worst. Out of the 7 SMGs on offer, the C9 is going to give you the best of both worlds when it comes to rate of fire, damage range, and mobility. And those are really the stats that matter. When we talk about attachments, I'll bring up stats again then, but right now, just talking about the general opinion I have of the weapon, it was fine to use, but it has one important quirk that's actually going to affect you in gunplay more than any of these numbers actually will. This gun has a strange S-shaped recoil pattern that's a little bit annoying. I guess S's are kind of smooth. This is more of a Z-shaped formation where it wants to go up and then zig and then zag backwards. So any sort of sustained fire with this weapon is kind of frustrating to pull off, and when you go to reset the recoil without a muzzle brake, the kick reset speed is kind of long, so you will go into that second recoil pattern. If you stop firing, let it go back down to 0, start firing again, it's not exactly going to have the same recoil pattern. You're going to be starting at recoil phase 2 like I've mentioned in my previous videos. So let's say you're running an extended mag 1 or 2, 40 or 50 rounds of ammunition, and you hold the trigger down, you start trying to get a kill. You might get one kill, but then the zigzagging and everything is going to kick in, so getting a multi-kill might be difficult. When you go to reset the gun, you're going to have that second recoil pattern, and it might throw you off. And I think this is a reason a lot of people lose gunfights with this gun. Even using horizontal recoil control attachments like the vertical foregrips or recoil springs still honestly in my opinion has the very frustrating pattern just with reduced magnitude. So when you have the same pattern and the same little inconsistent swerve, it's just not as noticeable. That's obviously a good thing, but I have not been able to make the gun just feel not bad, because you don't really want to have to run a muzzle brake on an SMG, especially when the flanking playstyle of an SMG is so strong. You're definitely going to want a suppressor on almost every loadout, so muzzle brake's kind of a no-no. Treyarch honestly needs to add another attachment that helps with kick reset speed. If they insist on having a really bad secret kick reset speed that puts you into a phase 2 recoil pattern, I don't know, I'm gonna be harping on this until they fix that, because it is a very frustrating mechanic. And I think on guns like the MP5 it really shines, because once you start to anticipate that zigzag, you just have to also anticipate that if you stop firing and then start firing again really quickly, you're gonna start at that second stage, even if it feels like you've reset. But enough harping about that. The recoil pattern is really the only thing you have to fight on this gun, which is great to hear, I guess, right? Like, there's nothing really else you have to worry about. But like I said, the aesthetics of this weapon was going to be a big part of the review, and that is because, statistically, there's not much to say about the gun. When it comes to how the C9 feels to use, once you are aware of that zigzag recoil pattern and you get a control on that, then the gun kind of sings. Again, good mobility, good range, good rate of fire, solid muzzle velocity. Within your effective range, you have a wonderful 4-shot killing SMG that's hit scan. And even though maybe Treyarch thought we were going to be tired of seeing the MP5 in Call of Duty, I really never get tired of seeing an MP5 in a first-person shooter. However, seeing an ugly one is going to make me more annoyed. So, when it comes to this MP5, my builds, 2 out of the 3, are dedicated towards making it look cool, because I don't think there's a lot of attachment combinations you really need to be doing with the C9. With how SMG play is in this game, I don't know why you would run Gunfighter. You have a bunch of little bonuses on a gun that's already sort of rounded out in terms of stats, and you can only get the recoil so low, you can only make the muzzle velocity so fast, you can only make the magazine so big. And on the topic of a really big magazine, if you run the 50-round mag, you hurt your mobility, and in my opinion, in this game, if you start to hurt your mobility with SMGs, you might as well just be using one of the more mobile assault rifles, because that's sort of the meta of this game. So my classes don't use Gunfighter. I know, I thought I was gonna at least have one Gunfighter class on here for you guys. I just could not justify the 8 attachments. It felt like I was just piling onto a gun that was already fine at the expense of the rest of my loadout. So let's focus on making the gun look cool, and the first way we're gonna do that is with these attachments here.
The HK Tactical Lighted Forearm, the quick detachable scope mounting system, along with HK's full line of accessories, make the HK94 adaptable to virtually any situation.
Our first build is very Rainbow Six Siege MP5K in my opinion, and I rather like this one. You have the vertical foregrip, the CHF barrel, suppressor, flip mag, and balanced stock. This is going to give you a good balance of mobility and firepower, and the CHF barrel, you might say, well, that's not really that important. Well, within your maximum damage range, you will be able to land a 3-shot kill on somebody if you land 3 shots to the head. And while that's not the most practical thing to go for, it really pisses people off when you do land that 3-shot headshot. They feel absolutely melted. And in my opinion, because of the recoil pattern and how I play with the C9, the extra recoil that comes from the CHF barrel doesn't really hurt my feelings. It works just fine. This thing's mobile, this thing will kill quickly. I highly recommend this if you want a cool looking C9 that can piss people off in close range. This next one's also quite the looker. This has the reinforced barrel, suppressor, the Kepler Microflex, the heavy stock, and extended mag 1. If you can't tell, I'm going for a bit of an MW 2019 original COD 4 SMG vibe. I wanted the gun to feel tactical, I wanted the gun to look nice, and in my opinion, this is the most MP5 you can make this MP5 look in this game. So toning that flinch all the way down pretty much to 0, using the mobility of the gun to get into sort of close quarter situations, and then holding down an angle with a nice 40-round mag of 4-shot kill ammunition honestly works pretty well. And with that reinforced barrel, and if you've mastered the recoil pattern, you're going to be able to fight a little out of your effective range. And while you might say, why the fuck is there a reflex sight on here? The reason there's a reflex sight on there is that we want the gun to look cool, and the iron sights on the C9 are ugly as hell. Even though they're very efficient and they work really well, they're ugly, and the purpose of this build was to look cool and feel cool and actually play pretty well, and I think I struck the perfect balance with this guy. Give him a try online if you're more interested in a good looking firearm versus a meta firearm. And when it comes to meta stuff, here's how I would run the gun if I was tryharding, because the C9 competitively does hold its own. And when it comes down to it, long barrel for just pushing out that maximum range as much as possible so that we have the most amount of consistency in our shots to kill. Suppressor, Ranger foregrip because it helps with the recoil and helps with our sprint speed because we're going to be aggressive. Extended mag 1, again, not the best option for everyone and every map, but I like it. And the infiltrator stock for aim walking movement speed so I can sprint faster, come out of sprint, and immediately start strafing into a gunfight. The aim down sight and sprint to fire time on the C9 are just fine. They work just well enough. I don't need a commando grip. I don't need quick draw grip. I think, honestly, this is the way I would run it if you told me to play with the gun for money. And so I wanted to give you guys a little bit more of a try-hard build, a sweatier build here at the end. But those other two builds, I think, are just more fun ways to run the weapon. The C9 is so versatile, you can get away with not being practical and optimal. And as we go through the series, we're gonna be talking about so many guns that are fussy and require more than 5 attachments, and we're gonna build those to be optimal. We're gonna min-max our stats and everything. But for this episode, the C9 is so fun, I thought I'd have fun with it. I hope you had fun with me. I give this gun about an MP5 out of 10 because it doesn't look like an MP5, and that makes me mad. I'll see you when I see you guys. Goodbye.
HK firearms have proven their superiority time and time again, whether in battle, on a wilderness hunting trip, or at the target range. For reliability and performance over years of use, whether for self-defense or sport, guns made by Heckler & Koch are the most uncompromising firearms in the world.